This meeting
Great.
is being
Thank you to
recorded.
everybody that's joined us today. We really appreciate that. I'm sure that you're here because you, like us, have lots and lots of questions, and it's something that we're going to endeavor to answer together. If I can't answer it, we've got a number of our licensees that have joined us as well. I saw Deline has also joined us recently, just a couple of minutes ago, and we'll be leaning on you for assistance and information as and where and when, guys. So it's Manny and Deline and Roger and John Bailey Brown and people that are licensees that may be able to help us with the answers as well. I'm going to ask everybody right now, if you don't mind, just to switch your camera off. And the reason for that is that we've got a lot of guests that are coming in, and the screen's just going to fill up completely. And we won't be able to see anybody or see anything. So if you don't mind switching your camera off, I'd appreciate that. And we'll be here in the background all along. You can also switch your microphones off, and I think that Natalie is able to control that. And there we go. So, with that in mind, I just want to start off by saying thank you for joining us. It's really nice. Maybe you're watching this as a video, you didn't make the actual meeting itself, and you're just watching it afterwards. And that is absolutely fine with us. I'm going to suggest that you take notes. Hold your questions till the very, very end. And then after we switch the recording off, you can fire away with as many questions as you want. We have a little protocol that we'll go through in a moment. And that protocol includes things like cameras and recordings and things of that nature. So you got an invitation from Natalie. She sent out an invitation that said, we're talking about SETA QCTO and all these things and the accreditation process that goes around that aspect, specifically for the occupational health and safety people. If you, like us, have been waiting to, I see somebody, sorry, Natalie, there's somebody saying, yes, start my video.
Yeah, your video is off.
My video is off. Oh, I get confused here with all these buttons. New technology. Okay, so you got the email, and you probably have been scratching your head over the past couple of months as to what in heaven's name is going on. Previously, it was a relatively simple system. We didn't have too much hassle, and it was a matter of that we got on with the job of training people and making sure that they complied with the law. Now it's a matter of admin and finance, and gosh, there's all kinds of things that we have to deal with in the meantime, which becomes costly and time consuming and so forth. Wow. Okay, for some reason it seems to be changing. Let's just carry on. Okay, it's important for me to note that I am not a lawyer. Although I've got a quasi-legal background, I spent many, many years in law enforcement. I was a policeman in the South African Police during the latter part of the hippie movement. I was a policeman in the South African Navy and then became an officer in the Navy. I then moved across into not a prosecutorial role, but in a disciplinary role. Then I decided to leave, get a job that paid more, and became a security manager at a national key point. While I was there, I was introduced to occupational safety, and I landed up going on numerous NOSA courses. Loved the courses, loved the organization, and got a job offer from them. And I worked for NOSA in the Western Cape for 5 years. And that was a fascinating time. And while I was there, I realized that there's this huge, huge market that needs to be met. The needs of the South African employees and employers, just massive. So I made a concerted effort to get to know the legislation and spent a lot of time studying, looking, reading, talking to inspectors, speaking to various legal minds and so forth. And what I'm going to share with you is a little bit of what I know. Now, I cannot do it all myself. And there's things that I need to lean on a research center. And you'll see with this presentation, I've done a fair amount of Googling, and I've also used ChatGPT to provide me or just to verify some of the questions that I had myself. Now, if you need a lawyer, tell us, because we're well connected. We've got a lot of lawyers that would be able to provide you with information. I'm going to ask Natalie just to quickly run through the etiquette, and she's going to talk to you about what you can and can't or should or shouldn't do. Natalie, you ready for this?
Yes, I am. Thanks so much. So, as mentioned, if you could please make sure that your mic is muted and that your camera is also off for the duration of the presentation. We just ask that you hold your questions until the end. It may get lost in the chat box. There are about 200 odd people on today. So, rather write your question down and save it for the Q&A at the end, where we will stop the recording and then we will answer your questions. Please also change your name so that we can see who you are. Sometimes there's some random names like Zoom user or your phone name. So please make sure you rename yourself to your actual name, and you can even add in your company. That would be great. And what else? Feel free to chat in the chat box if you would like. And then I'm the go-to for any questions related to interest services. Penny is your go-to for QCTO info, and Ken is your go-to for topic info. I think that's all.
And that's fantastic, Natalie. Thank you so much. So, folks, I must just quickly mention to you that if you have any power outages or anything like that, don't worry, we are recording. We're going to upload this to YouTube this evening, and then Natalie will make the URL available to you so that you can watch the entire recording again and again and again. Okay, so having said that, let's move straight into it. There's some of the contact details over there so that you can chat to Natalie. That's the marketing officer's number. And she mentioned the Zoom chat box as well, and there's her email address. So, with that in mind, I said to you that I worked for NOSA for 5 years, and I realized that there was a need in the marketplace for extensive training, and that training went beyond the borders of South Africa. So, what Penny and I decided to do after running this training company that we established, INTRA-Train, we decided to become an agency that would assist training providers like yourself, internal or external, to get their businesses or their departments up and running. And we created a business model very similar to a franchise. It's not a franchise, very specifically, but it's a licensing model in terms of the Consumer Protection Act. And I'm telling you this because this is something that you might be interested in, and we do not want to make today a salesy kind of presentation. But the license is available, and there's a document called the prospectus, and you can get that off our website by going onto the website. We'll give you the details, and you can download it and you can have a look at it. 3 licenses that are really important is Platinum, Prime, and Basic. And then, of course, we've also got a starter license for those who just want to get their toe in the water. Okay, so having said that, here's our team. This isn't the entire team. We've got a couple of other people that also freelance with us. And you can see the top 3 people on the left-hand side is the Annandale clan. It's a family business. And the rest of the team are, do you want to quickly introduce them, Penny?
Sure. Hi. So I'm Penny, and I'm Ken's wife and also co-founder of Intra some more than 12 years ago. I'm more on the finance side of the business and the delivery side of the business. I champion the e-learning platform that we offer our licensees, and also very much invested in the accreditation processes with QCTO. Back to Ken.
Fantastic. On the left-hand side, bottom corner, there's a lady. Her name is Deline Sheesby. Deline, would you like to introduce yourself quickly? Well, she's unmuted.
Hi, hello everybody. Hope you're all well and looking forward to this. Yes, and I am no longer in Johannesburg, and I can see you all sitting there in your jackets and all of that, and I'm sitting here in my shorts and t-shirt. So wow.
As are we, as are we. Deline, thank you so much. Deline's got a lot of experience in the health and safety game. I'm not going to say how many years, because that's going to age both of us, Deline, but she is regarded as one of the leading lights in the health and safety game in South Africa.
Deline is now hailing from Durban, so she's very happy to be on the beach.
The phenomenal training material developer, and has helped us enormously. Okay, so I mentioned training material, and in closing on the salesy bit, we've got 25 training courses that are ready to run, DIY training courses, focusing predominantly on legal compliance, making them risk specific if and when you need them, and then ultimately focusing again on compliance as opposed to SAQA credits. But we're not suggesting that we're not going to follow the SAQA credit thing. We will definitely follow them. Those are some of the programs that we've got, and there's a catalog, and you can take a look at it, and you can see if there's anything there that can help you run your own training material. You'll notice that it comes with facilitator guides and visuals and templates and things of that nature. So it's pretty comprehensive. All of this you can find on our website, and you'll also find our training material shop and the e-learning shop that Penny spoke about. Now, lastly, just a quick advert. Coming up shortly next week in Johannesburg is AOSH, which is the biggest expo in South Africa for occupational health and safety, and you can get a free ticket if you go onto the AOSH website, and you can join us and come to our stand. Our stand is number A1, directly opposite the Saiosh Theatre and conference area. So, okay, let's get straight into the presentation. Where to from here? What do we do? And there's an old saying that says, if you don't know where you're going, how will you know when you get there? And that's a truism. To kick off, I'm going to say to you that we've got something like 17 million employees in South Africa. That's the market for occupational health and safety. The legislation includes 23 regulations, as you know. We also know that there's a Mines Health and Safety Act, and that's another piece of predominant legislation, but it's only a segment of the 17 million. Sadly, we're in a situation where we have about 32% of the population unemployed, and many of them are unemployable until such time as we actually can give them the skills. And occupational health and safety is one of the skills that people need to actually get a job. So we'll talk about that later. We know that in 1994, we got democracy in South Africa, and the tripartite government, as we know it now, still to a degree, has now given direction to the Department of Employment and Labor and the Department of Higher Education. And you'll see throughout this presentation and throughout your experience how these three tripartite organizations have influenced the direction of health and safety training in South Africa. We know and have had the opportunity of meeting some of the officials and the management from the Department of Employment and Labor, and I personally have had the privilege of meeting the former Chief Inspector, recently meeting the current Chief Inspector and the Inspector General at a Saiosh conference in Cape Town in August last year. So getting to know these folk and getting to know former Chief Inspectors and attorneys within the organization and prosecutors within the organization, I think we have a pretty good idea of where we're going and what we need to do. Now we've got to do it. We've got to actually get this done. In South Africa, we've got this piece of legislation that's the the Occupational Health and Safety Act. It was preceded by the Factories Act and the Machinery and Occupational Safety Act. We then got the Occupational Health and Safety Act, or OSA, back in 1993. And we have now accumulated something like 23 regulations. All of those regulations have to be complied with. And most of the regulations require some form of educational training, and we will play a part in it. I'm sure that you're going to play a part in it as well. We've also been monitoring and following the possibility of the amendment bill coming out. It's been spoken about a lot. And I heard at the conference, at the Saiosh conference in August last year, that the Inspector General said that it's almost on the President's table. And we know that the President has been signing bills like crazy at the moment. So we're hoping to see the Occupational Health and Safety Act amendment bill coming out. Now, really important. We do need to know that this legislation, the OSA, is in fact criminal legislation, and it is self-regulatory and it is mandatory. In other words, there's no getting away from it. There's a principle in law called the reasonable man. I'm sure you're familiar with that. And we know that the reasonable man, one of the things that he or she must do is prove that they have complied with the legislation. Really important. We see within the legislation there are rights, and that's rights of the employees, and responsibilities of supervisors and managers and charge hands and people like that. There are a couple of very, very specific training related sections, such as Section 8 and Section 13. We'll touch on that in a moment. And we know that in the regulations, they talk about competency. And then lastly, something that a lot of health and safety professionals have not really taken seriously is getting to know and understand the Labor Relations Act and how the elements of the Labor Relations Act, such as consultation and bargaining, come into the Occupational Health and Safety Act, where they use those words. And I know for a fact, I spoke at the Saiosh conference last year, and the question that I asked the audience was, how many of the 500 people that were there have actually ever attended a workshop on the Labor Relations Act? And I was amazed to see only about a dozen people put up their hands. That's it. So in other words, we as health and safety people have kind of like ignored the fact that there is another piece of legislation that's as relevant as well. Now, I'm going to quickly extract Section 8, or some elements out of Section 8. Take into account that Section 8 is the employer's duty, and the employer's duty, in fact, I was friends with a former provincial inspector, a man by the name of JJ van Rensburg, and he was an Afrikaans fellow, and he had a lovely Afrikaans accent when speaking English, and he used to speak of the employer as almost as if it's a female, and the employee as if it's male and female, but it's employer and employee. And JJ spoke about this section extensively. And he said it's broken up into 3 sections. The first section we can call step 1. It's not called that in the legislation, but it says the employer shall establish the hazards. Step 2, the employer shall establish the precautionary measures. And then step 3, the employer shall provide information, instructions, training, and supervision. So hazards, precautionary measures, information, instruction, training, and supervision. And the word supervision comes up, and it says that the supervisor must be trained to understand the hazards. So this is really quite extensive. It also gives you a game plan. And if you're looking at running a training program or having somebody run a training program for you, please make sure that it complies with the legislative requirements, step 1, 2, and 3. And please make absolutely sure that the training is not generic, sort of packaged training. Now, I do know that I ran the same program using the same material over and over and over without making it hazard or risk specific, which essentially means that legislation may not have passed the test of law. And with that in mind, we carry on. We have a look at section 13. We know that goes hand in hand with section 8. And it says, as far as reasonably practicable, cause every. Now that's interesting. You see this word every and all coming up throughout the legislation. Every employee to be made conversant with the hazards to his health and safety, and as well as all the precautions. Now, which precautions? These are the precautions that were established by the employer. Okay, so now that we've established that a little bit in terms of the legal requirements, what kind of dangers, hazards, and risks occur in the workplace? And these need to be identified in a hazard identification and risk assessment. Because remember, we saw step 1, the employer must identify the hazards. Have a look at some of those topics there. I had a lady call me the other day, well, a while ago, and she said to me, very kindly, she said, can I help her write a training program for health and safety? And I said, what aspect of health and safety? What aspect? And to her, it was like, oh, we're going to write this one-day session. It's going to cover the entire science of occupational health, occupational safety, occupational hygiene, occupational medicine. She wanted to just cover it all in a one-day course. And I said, no, it doesn't work like that. This is a science, and there's a lot of information that needs to be covered there. Okay, so there is something that I do need to mention as well, is that in the regulations, they often talk about training. And you come across, there's about 4 or 5 places where the regulation asks for or calls for competency. And those first 4 regulations, very, very clear. General safety regs, driven machinery regs, construction regs, and ergonomic regulations, they speak about competency. And the definition in that regulation, and this doesn't come up in the Occupational Health and Safety Act definitions as such, it says that if there is, it says that where there's appropriate qualification and training registered in terms of the NQF Act, then that is the training that must be done. Now, there's only about 4 places. There are a number of other regulations as well where they do talk of training, but they're not common. However, they are important if you're going to find yourself working in that arena. And then together with that, so imagine this, we're going to be doing the ergonomics regulation. So you're going to teach the person ergonomics, and then you're also going to teach them about the Act. It says there in subsection B, it says, or sub-regulation B, is familiar. This person needs to be familiar with the Act. So it's almost 2 courses, one on the subject matter or the topic, the other one on the Act and regulations. So very, very interesting. And I can see an opportunity there if you're a commercially driven or orientated trainer. Now, what if you don't do it? Well, I have a little favorite saying. I say that our job as occupational health and safety people is to keep employers out of court and to keep employees out of hospital. But if we don't, we know that there's penalties. And this is criminal legislation. And being a former law enforcement officer, I know exactly what we're talking about. And there is imprisonment, there's fingerprints, there's a criminal record, there's possibility of fines and all kinds of sanctions against an individual. That's in terms of the current Act. Now, I personally don't like threatening people with the legislation because I think a lot of employers go, yeah, been there, done that, got that T-shirt, I know all about it. Nobody ever does anything about it, blah, blah, blah. We hear this all the time. And I can see that the Department of Employment and Labour has changed or is changing the legislation with the bill. And they're pushing the fines up to, or they're proposing that the fines go up to 5 million rand. Now, I don't know if you know this, but that's 5 million rand per offence, not a cumulative. Now, that is to the best of my knowledge. I mentioned I'm not a lawyer. If you have a better insight into that, please let me know. But that's the way I understand it. And I don't know of too many people that have 5 million rand lying around just in case there is some sort of incident. And we know that these incidents occur on a regular basis. We see it in the paper. Okay, now, we're talking about offences and penalties. We also see that the Department of Employment and Labour is gearing itself to employ something like 20,000 new, they talk about intern labour inspectors. So can you imagine the impact on employers that are not geared towards complying with the legislation? 20,000. It's really quite mind-blowing. So I hear people saying to me at the same time, they say, Ken, this training that we're going to be doing, is it accredited? And I'm sure you have that question all the time if you happen to be a vendor training and running training programs, or you happen to be an employer. Is it accredited? So I put together a presentation a little while ago. You can look at it on YouTube, and it's 10 reasons why employers want accreditation. Now, as I was doing my research over the years, I suddenly realized, but hang on, employers don't seem to fully understand what this accreditation thing is. And we can see that there is a misunderstanding, misinformation, if you like, and that I'm sure that misinformation is spread at braais and barbecues and on the golf course or on the sports field or something like that. And there's a belief where people say all health and safety training has to be accredited. The answer is no, that's wrong. Not all, only where the law says it must be accredited or where it's competency-based. I speak with the former chief inspector, Mr. Tibuzana, from time to time. He has a statement that he's made, gosh, more than once, where he says, if it's not in the law, don't you write it into the law. Only the minister can write stuff into the law. Now, there is a belief that employers can only claim their levies back when making use of a credit provider when it comes to getting the skills rebate levies back. But that's not true. We'll also provide you with the link, and you can go and do your own research. Now, once again, whenever you see something like that, please check it. Do a fact check and make sure that I'm right. I don't pretend to know it all. And if I am wrong, please point out where you found out that I was wrong. Okay. Then we need to understand how the skills levy thing works. So for all employers that pay out more than 500,000 in salary per annum, they must pay 1% of that salary bill to SARS. SARS will then forward 80% of that to the SETAs and 20% to the National Skills Fund. Then, as and when the training has been done, the SETAs will pay grants in the form of either mandatory grants or discretionary grants. And the employer can claim either or the mandatory grant, which is 20% of 1%, by the way, 20% of 1%, and or the discretionary grants as the opportunity arises. And that's based on the fact that they're going to submit the WSP and the ATR. Now, knowing that is very useful. And that's why a lot of employers say, I want all the training to be accredited so that I can get my money back. And we go, yeah, meneer, I understand that. But in a government gazette, it says that's not the case. Very important. And I would like to have you challenge me if that's wrong. Okay. Then we also hear employers saying, I want the training to be accredited so that when we do health and safety training, I can get triple B, double E points. Well, here's another thing that's wrong. And if you have a look at those two links over there, Natalie can provide them to you. She's got them. And you have a look at those links and go and do your homework and have a look at that government gazette. And it says, no, the Department of Trade and Industry does not allow BBBEE points for mandatory, regulatory, or compulsory training. So there's 2 points. Now, I'm not trying to shoot down the employer's request for accreditation. I think accreditation is absolutely essential, but it isn't a legal thing. So get it if you can, great, but they're not going to be able to use their health and safety training for that purpose. Okay, now, a little bit more information. You notice that I've got a lot of information and I've written it into articles. And there's one article that I wrote saying, am I allowed to do training? Because the question comes up, who's going to do this training? And we can see in section 8, it says the employer must provide the training. The employer. Now, I'm sure you've heard of this term where people say, this guy's a fly-by-night. Well, really what that means is that they're not accredited. That's really what it means. So an employer who's doing the training in terms of the law, are they fly-by-nights when they comply with the law? So I like to challenge that. And the fact is that if an experienced person 20, 30, 40 years in the health and safety game, trains somebody, are they not able to do that on behalf of the employer and provide the training? Then together with that, I told you that we've got the training manual, the training material catalog. Please get a copy of that and see if that will work for you. So with all of that in mind, we've got this clutter that's taking place in our brains at the moment. What's going on? Who's doing what? So we say, step one in this entire equation, make sure you comply with the law. Now, if you do not comply with the NQF Act or the SACWA Act, they're not going to put you in jail. It's not a criminal offense. But don't comply with the Occupational Health and Safety Act, or maybe mine's Health and Safety Act, or the regulations, they can put you in jail. Now, that's quite a threat. That really is quite a threat. So we start off by saying, right, let's make sure that the employer is in compliance. And then, while that is happening, let's get ready for QCTO. Okay, so let's quickly talk about these two departments. Firstly, the Department of Education and Labor. And we saw that the Department of Employment, or the old Department of Manpower, Employment and Labor, they have now, over the last couple of years, been influenced by the Department of Employment and Labor. And if you remember way back when, we used to have four Department of Employment, they were race-based, and then they decided they're going to do away with that, and they then had two departments, basic education and then higher education. And we then see there must have been a discussion behind closed doors where the Department of Employment and Labor decided or agreed to hand over all training directly to the Department of Employment and Labor, and they would then take it and they would then manage it. Whether or not that was a good decision, I don't know. With time will tell, but we've seen that there are a number of hiccups that have taken place along the way. So we see that back in the 1980s, when I was at NOSA or left NOSA and started my own training company, there was a thing called an industry training board, and there was a precursor to the SETAs. We know at the time that we had trade schools, and many of us actually attended a trade school, and as a result of that, we became artisans. Then, back in 1998, we got the SETAs. That was followed in 2010 by the QCTO. That was followed in 2014 by TVET, and now we need to make a way forward. And what is going to happen, where we're going with that. So these are things that I believe that for some of you, this is the first time that you're hearing it. So I'm just being fairly simplistic in my approach, but making sure that you know and understand it. Back in June of 2023, the Department of Employment and Labor, the Department of Higher Education then declared all something like 11,000 unit standards were no longer to be used. And they said they expired. And there was an outcry. And lots of people, myself included, we petitioned, and eventually the Department of Higher Education, DET, they changed their mind on that. In the meantime, they also said that training providers that were accredited can continue to operate under their accreditation, but they would not accredit anybody else. No one else could get accreditation. We'd have to wait for the QCTO. Now, Penny was saying to me today that there are certain SETAs that have had their accreditation renewed or restored. Which one is that, Penny? I think you said it was the construction SETA.
Yes, I think it was the CETA in particular and the TETA.
So this is what's happening in the background. Then they turned around and thankfully they said, right, some unit standards, not all, some unit standards have been extended to June 2026. And I did a little search this morning and I was having a look at it as part of the research, such as working at heights or fall arrest. There were 3 unit standards previously. 2 of them have been extended, but the third one, according to the SACWA website, has not been extended. I find that confusing. I don't really know what, where, and when, but in any case, it is what it is. And I'm going to suggest that you, if you operate in that arena, that you do a little bit of homework on your own. Now, here's one of my favorite slides. This is really interesting because this terminology is confusing. A lot of people think accreditation is alignment or certification or approval. They don't know the difference. And there is a huge difference between these things. For instance, Saiosh has a process called verification, not accreditation. I've heard of people saying, I am an accredited training material provider. And I go, are you accredited with the SETA? No, I attended an accredited course. And with that, there is an assumption that I'm automatically accredited because I completed the course. Very confusing. And we hear it all the time. People want to buy accredited training material. Okay, there's no such thing as accredited training material. In fact, there's another lad that sells material online and he says this is pre-accredited. I'm not too sure what that means. Maybe it's just a play on words or something like that. Then we spoke about competent, and how about compliant or licensed? And that's exactly what we do in terms of the Consumer Protection Act. And then registered, and then verified. So it's important that we get our terminology right so that when we speak in the conversation or writing letters or making statements or something like that, or even delivering evidence in the event of a court case, that we get the terminology right. So what we're going to be talking about and focusing on is accreditation. And the future of accreditation is with QCTO. So those unit standards need to all be replaced by what they're calling curriculum codes. And that's going to be a process. We know that there are some curriculum codes already in existence for qualifications and for some skills programs. SPs are skills programs, but not a lot in the health and safety field. Not a lot, especially not a lot in the general employment category, commerce and industry, and so forth. As a result of that, it is really difficult to get a broad base of occupational health and safety accreditation. In the past, you could have had with SETA, you could have had 6 or 7 or maybe even 20 or 30 accredited courses that you could run. Now, unfortunately, not. And we also know that the QCTO, let me just quickly mention this, the QCTO, the term QCTO is Quality Council for Trades and Occupations. And here's a question. Is a health and safety rep or a volunteer firefighter a trade or an occupation? Or is it just a role? And in my opinion, it's a role. Okay, so having said that, so now we're waiting for the QCTO to actually publish the new codes. And Penny will talk a little bit about what has been done and what we can get. We also know that when it comes to QCTO, they will be issuing the certificates in future, not you. QCTO will issue the certificate of a QCTO accredited course. And Penny will pick up on that and she'll talk about that a lot. So I just want to quickly mention as well, when you're going for accreditation with the QCTO, they're going to treat you like a college in all manners. Can you imagine that? I used to be a one-man band operating out of the boot of my car and travel around Cape Town and used to run health and safety training programs. Not a college. I had an office, which was actually the guest room. And I had a typewriter, believe it or not. Can you believe people still had that? It's even before faxes. So I wasn't a college, but they would treat you like a college with all the requirements. And Penny will talk about that. So now the question is, which have been extended, which have expired, and you can go onto this website and you can ask Natalie for the website, the URL, and that's a SACWA website where you can go and do a search. I did a search this morning, as I mentioned, and I was playing around, and I searched for first aid training programs, expecting to see 3, the old level 1, 2, and 3, in terms of the general safety regulation. Do you know that there are 15 different first aid programs? And now we've got 3 more. That takes it up to 18 programs. And in some of these instances, these programs have been extended. And this is like a little bit mind-blowing. Okay, so that's the one link. The other link is to find out which programs have been published. So once again, playing on that website over there, the QCTO website, I type in, every day I go there and I type in something like health and safety representative. And I find that there is a health and safety representative program, but only for forestry, not for general industry. Mining. But it's a really crazy, Penny says, and for mining, it's a really crazy situation, because if we're talking health and safety representatives, you and I know this, it's normally 2 or 3 or 4 credits. I think the forestry health and safety rep course is 24 credits. So what would have been a 2, 3, 4 day course is now goes into weeks. Okay, now when they're going to get this all sorted out, I don't know. It is something that we're waiting, anticipating, and Penny will give you a little bit more information. Now, as we move on, I just want to quickly talk about the professional bodies. If you're a member of a professional body, please approach the professional body and ask them for more information. I'm a member of Saiosh. Penny and I, as Intra, are members, corporate members of Saiosh, and I've been really privileged to serve on the Saiosh Health and Safety Training Advisory Committee. And as a result of that, I've had the opportunity of getting an insight into so many things that are happening in the marketplace. But maybe you're a member of the Institute of Working at Heights or Occupational Hygiene or organizations such as that. So please approach your professional body and ask them for more information. Now, as I start wrapping up, I want to quickly say this. Important to know that accredited training is really time consuming. So if you imagine that's the journey, point 1 through to 16, that's the process for the employer. The employer needs to select which employees are going to go on the course. Then, in terms of certain courses, the law requires that there must be agreement on that training. You go, agreement with who? Well, with the committee for starters. Then we see that the employer must identify and select the accredited training company based on the due diligence. Then there's the facilitation, assessment, and the moderation of that entire process, and so forth, and so forth, and so forth. Now, that ultimately means that maybe a month or 2 or 3 later, the employee can be declared competent and the employer can be declared compliant. And here is another little challenge that I see. And you and I know this, that an employer gets a notification saying the inspector is going to be there next week, Tuesday. So they send their delegates on the course this week, and they need proof that they went on the course when the inspector arrives. Well, what happens if the inspector, he looks at the certificate and it's not accredited? And what happens if the employer does not receive the certificate? Does that mean they're in non-compliance with the legislation when we said it's criminal legislation? Now compare that to simple legal compliance training. And this is almost like old school. Is it perfect? No, definitely not. I would be the first to say this isn't perfect, but that's what it was. And now it's a matter of saying which is more affordable, that one or that one, that one or that one. And credit-bearing training is really expensive. So for a 1-day course or a 2-day course, imagine that the course is being run on your premises or you're running the course. These are the people that have to be involved and, more importantly, just purely from a financial point of view, have to be remunerated for running the course. That's a lot of people involved, and that's expensive. And in most instances, I would go as far as saying unproductive. So please take note that my personal preference at the moment is let's comply with the law. Make sure that the employer doesn't go to jail. And then, slowly but surely, get our ducks in a row. And to help you get your ducks in a row, I'm going to ask Penny to take over, and she's going to talk to you about the QCTO accreditation process and what INTRA's been doing, and hopefully give you a lot of hints and tips in the meantime, and a lot of hope. So it's almost standing in the gap.
Thanks so much, Ken. And in the few minutes that I have left, let me quickly give you an update as to exactly what is happening. As you know, the QCTO's mandate was to qualify a skilled and capable workforce. So they are looking to enable employees to be more employable and to upskill our employees. What we have found in the QCTO is that they have found that they have not had enough capacity to deal with the demand. They were not expecting to have to deal with the short course industry. In fact, they flatly refused. A year or 2 ago, we were in possession of a letter from the CEO flatly stating that they were not interested in any course under 8 credits. However, this soccer ball got bounced back to Department of Employment and Labour and back again to QCTO and has now landed firmly back at QCTO. So this is why we're sitting with this vacuum in the area of the short course industry. And this is also something that is everybody is trying to address as soon as possible, but we are sitting a year later from the June deadline of last year. And we're only a year away from the June 2026 deadline next year. So we are certainly in an urgent situation. The QCTO partners with the SETAs to build their capacity in terms of being able to develop these skills programs. and also to follow through on the accreditation processes, etc. And in particular, in terms of health and safety, they've been working with the HWSETA, and we were privileged to work on one of the HWSETA work groups. A lot of really amazing, awesome people contributing and volunteering their time here in order to create these new skills programs. We had originally in September of 23, the first of the skills programs being published, the 3 first aid QCTO programs. And most of you probably have already done your accreditation with these first 3 first aid programs. They've been well received. There are some issues that have been raised, and HPCSA and HWSETA are dealing with that, and we do believe that there will be a revision at some point, and we'll keep you informed of that. Also, in the pipeline with HWSETA, they already submitted in October of last year 12 new essential OHS skills programs, which would cover us for legal liability, HAZREP and HIRA, and emergency evacuation, a couple of key areas. But unfortunately, they met with some demands for additional amendments, and this has caused a lot of delays. And I was in touch with Shampa from HWSETA just a few days ago, and she updated me that they have resubmitted them once again. They were anticipating that they would be published now in May, June of this year, which would be awesome because we have so many OHS training providers who are not necessarily specialists in first aid. And as you know, with first aid, that also comes together with a lot of specialized equipment, etc., but do want to offer basic health and safety training. So we really do need this first set of 12 OHS skills programs to be published. And as soon as they are, we will certainly be publicizing it and letting you know immediately so that you can rock and roll. In the pipeline, there's another 13 behind that. And we are hoping that those will also be published before the end of this year. And so it's going to continue over the next couple of years. And as Kez was saying, health and safety is actually recognized as a scarce skill. So there's a huge demand for health and safety training. And we do have full qualifications and part qualifications in health and safety, but our focus is definitely the short course industry. And this is where we choose to focus in particular. The QCTO do not write their own course material. Anybody actually can develop course material. It needs to be according to the QCTO published curriculums. And they delineate exactly what the content should be. They do not insist on peer review, but these are all things that we do as Intra in terms of our training material, and our Intra licensees collaborate, and we're very grateful for their interest and their criticisms and their constructive criticisms that we can apply to our training material. The QCTO do not accredit course material, but they will examine it, of course, as part of the site visit audit, and where the verifier will focus predominantly on the learner matrix, or typically Form 3 and Form 4, and will look to see that the KMs, that's the knowledge modules, and the PMs, which is your practical modules, are complete and have all the necessary content. They will look specifically at the page-specific Form 3s and Form 4s and check and make sure that everything relates back to the curriculums precisely. That really, and we provide those partially filled out as part of our training material. They will look to see that you have separate fees and an assessment criteria for that particular skills program. And they will look at the general quality outlay, understandability, and they will maybe look at a sample content. They're not going to dig down deep into the technical content, but a lot of the verifiers are subject matter experts, and they will quickly see if your training material is not up to par. Thankfully, we've had some really great compliments about the inter-training material, and we're super excited going forward. So SETA versus QCTO, what are the advantages? So here I'm going to be positive Penny. I know there was critical Ken, and I'm positive Penny, but there are a lot of advantages over the SETA accreditation processes, which were diverse. You know, we had many SETAs working in their own silos. And here we have a centralized online process. It's working well. The QCTO are generally more responsive and assistant system is working, and they have an intensive quality assurance program, which is certainly keeping us on our toes. But we do appreciate that, because at the end of the day, we do want to know that quality training is out there. Remember that people's lives are literally at stake with health and safety training. This is not a nice to have, this is a have to have. They also, because they have centralized templates, etc., they've reduced duplication and overlap. So a lot of advantages. So the first aid skills programs, they were published already in September 23, basic, intermediate, and advanced. And typically within the QCTO, they love to have basic, intermediate, and advanced for any and all subjects. And you're going to see that with the HAZREP, and you're going to see that with legal liability. And this is going to become the norm. Because why? Because they love for you to lay out a career pathway for your learners, so that they can be developed and evolved into better, more highly skilled positions, etc. So the HWCTA skills programs coming up, we just spoke about them very briefly. There are 2 OHS skills programs that have currently been sent to the HPCSA. That's the audio and the visual.
You just need to unmute. There is just some technical difficulties.
There we go. Sorry, we lost the signal there.
Thank you, thank you. I think we just need to go to screen share again.
Yep.
And just pick up where I left off. So guys, at the moment, I'm talking about the 12 skills programs that are currently coming through from the HWCTA and the QCTO. You will quickly see, as you're looking at these titles, that they are not what we used to. But just to interpret for you, it's essentially legal liability, HAZREP, evacuation, etc. A lot of the HIRA, incident investigation, just the critical, very important OHS skills programs that we all need. Bear in mind that you can only get accredited with the QCTO for a maximum of 5 skills programs or qualifications at any one time. So you will need to select which are the 5 most important for you, and then there's going to be a repetitive process for you going forward. As I say, this is imminent. We are hoping any day that these will be published so that you can rock and roll and go forward. Then the next 2 that are with the HPCSA is audiology and vision. I think just looking at some of the curriculum development that I was exposed to, very, very good, competent courses, and we are waiting for those to be published as well. And then 13 behind them, I'm sure you're all looking at ergonomics, because that's going to be a very, very popular one. We're looking forward to that. But that's probably going to be the second half of the year. And we hope that they will be able to speed up their processes so that it can be available to us as soon as possible. So the SAQA professional bodies are all lobbying behind the scenes furiously and trying to assist with this process and make it easier for us. With the CETA SETA, we were all looking forward to the Working at Heights, and Dr. Alti Creel and her team have done an extraordinary job behind the scenes, but unfortunately being frustrated on every turn. They have now decided, because of this, to implement an interim process and issue their own license to practice for Working at Heights training. And I spoke to Dr. Alti Creel just recently, and she's given me permission to just explain this. There will be a webinar that Institute of Working at Heights will be presenting in the month of June. They were hoping to get started by the 1st of June, but they're still busy with all of their policies and procedures, etc., etc. It will be important for you as a training provider, definitely, as we know with QCTO as well, to have your ETDP facilitator and assessor, SOR, or the QCTO equivalent. And of course, your experience in Working at Heights training will be fundamental. But with that all in place, there should be no reason why you would not get your license to practice with the Institute of Working at Heights. Please do go onto their website also to get more information. We also provide this linkage and referral, etc., as part of the intra-licensee support program. The LG-SETA was commissioned to do the skills programs for fire. As of today, and the latest communication from LG-SETA, they have not yet published or even developed the fire short course programs. They are going to be sending out invitations for those of you that would like to volunteer to be part of those development work groups shortly, and we'll send out that information to you as well. If you do have some time available, and those of you that have the expertise and subject matter expertise in this area, please do put yourselves forward here. We do need the fire skills programs as soon as possible. In the meantime, don't forget that Intra Originals, we have an excellent, outstanding fire legal compliance training program that you are able to train in the meantime. And that is a ready to roll training material, including PowerPoints, etc. Where the QCTO have made some progress is in the area of mining. There are several mining skills programs available which are specific to the mining industry. So if that's your area, we can definitely help you there. Forestry also have been fairly advanced in terms of what they have been publishing in terms of qualifications, part qualifications, and they've got a few skills programs available, but very heavy notional hours. Remember, we're looking at the 8 credits and under. Theirs tend to be a lot larger in terms of the credits. TETA have been excellent in getting all the machinery, crane, forklift, whatever. So they seem to be way ahead of most in terms of getting their ducks in a row. Once again, of course, you would need your Department of Employment and Labour approvals together with those as well. So if that's your area, we can definitely help you immediately and get you up and rolling as fast as possible. The good news is that the horrific QCTO tariffs that were proposed at the beginning of this year have been suspended. So grateful thanks to all the professional bodies and everybody that was lobbying behind the scenes. This would really have crippled a lot of small to medium training providers, and we're super grateful that this has been suspended for now, but we don't know when it might be brought back in. So please do take advantage and get your applications ready now, and avoid the tsunami, avoid the log jams. It just makes sense. We're a year out from the final deadline, June 2026, which is when the unit standards that are currently being allowed and have been renewed are going to expire. They, in the Government Gazette on the 13th of December, they clearly declared that there would be no additional extensions of these unit standards. So don't leave it until May next year to think about your accreditation. Let's get it in place now in good time. And once you've done one set, it's going to be a lot easier for you to do the second set and next set and next set, 5 at a time, 5 at a time, 5 at a time, until you have all of the training programs that really make sense to you and to your clients. So Intra decided in January of last year to introduce a do-it-yourself accreditation program to support our licensees, knowing that this was going to be an ongoing process over the next year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, as the QCTO plays catch up in terms of the short course training industry. And part of this is included in the Prime and Platinum license, but we have a comprehensive Google Drive Accredit, which is updated regularly, and grateful thanks to all our Intra licensees as well, who are sharing their personal intellectual property, etc., helping us improve our templates, etc. We also supply consultation services to our licensees, just helping them with queries. And there is a monthly do-it-yourself workshop, which is a 2-hour accreditation workshop. And now we are adding, due to popular demand, a monthly workshop dedicated to post-accreditation. Now I've got my accreditation letter. It's valid for 5 years. The enrollment of the students, etc., and the whole process of quality assurance with the QCTO up until you are able to collect your certificates for your learners. The extensions of scope, as I say, this is limited to 5, and they are going to look and see the courses that you have already been accredited for, that you have enrolled learners for those courses. so that, you're not just sitting there with accreditations that you're not making use of. Why do your own accreditation? Of course, it's going to save you a huge amount of time and a huge amount of money because of the repetitive process. It's going to put you in control. We are so proud of our licensees that have gone through this whole process on their own, and thankful, very, very much thankful to the QCTO for streamlining their processes to make it easier for our licensees also. But there are some dottings of the I's and crosses of the T's that are specific to the QCTO, and we are happy to have been able to assist our licensees with that information. It also gives you the responsibility. If you're missing a document, it's not anybody else's fault, it's your own, and you can correct it quickly. And once you've got into this repetitive cycle, other than, renewing the certification documents, making sure that they're currently dated, there's very little else that you would have to change other than the training material. And of course, it retains your privacy in terms of your financial information, etc. The workshop objectives, we really aim to simplify. So the French word facile, facilitator, means to make easy. And we really do try and make it as easy for you as possible. It's a step-by-step process. I actually come from a teaching background and I come from a project management background. So I really do enjoy this, and we've had great feedback. We are constantly changing and adding because this is a constantly evolving landscape. So what might have been true last month is not necessarily true this month. And each verifier also seems to be slightly different in terms of what they are looking for. So we're constantly evolving and adapting to the landscape around us. Within the Google Drive, there is a vast array of material, including the QMS, your OHS audit checklist, SLAs, MOUs, etc., etc. Everything is there. From the QCTO website, we do recommend that you download the QCTO Road to Success. This really is the learner workbook for the training providers accreditation process. And it's an easy downloadable from the website, and just go through that with a highlight. It will definitely help you a lot just to feel a little bit more orientated as to the QCTO policies and procedures. For those people, and we've had quite a few requests where they just don't have time, or maybe it's just overwhelming, and they prefer to have an accreditation assist program. So we've been pleased to include now a new product, which is our Prime Plus license, which will include a complete delivery in terms of the accreditation. So if that suits you and you don't want to be winging it on your own, you will feel more comfortable with this solution. It will include your online application, site visit preparation, and also your final accreditation process, follow-up, etc. So that is now also available from Intra. So quickly, the do-it-yourself QCTO accreditation process follows roughly a 6-month timeline, but your preparation phase can be as short or as long as you need it. Right now, if you are waiting for the OHS skills programs, this is your time to prepare. And we would really say get involved with the Prime license, already get the information with regards to everything that you will need to prepare, and get that all in place now. So the moment the OHS skills programs are published, we'll be able to provide you with the training materials, and you'll be able to submit your online application. Once you've done your online application and you get the QCTO response and you upload your documents, there's a desktop evaluation. There's a little bit of a time in that. Maybe it could be an extra 10 days the QCTO might give you if they need a document fixed. But normally there's about a 21-day period there. So maybe that accounts for 1 month of your 6-month process. Then they are going to set up a site visit. And we do suggest, of course, that your site visit preparation is done at the beginning and not once your desktop evaluation is complete, because you might get a very quick surprise in that your site visit is now next week and you're not ready. So we do assist you a lot with the site visit preparation. We have a very, very high standard, and take you through the necessary forms that you will need to fill out, etc. And then after your site visit, it's a process where the QCTO Accreditation Committee will pick up the report and issue your letter of accreditation. That's a very, very simplistic rundown, but in the essence of time, That's all that we have time for today. So yes, really get your ducks in a row, That's very, very important. A couple of big differences for the QCTO as compared to the SETA. Very big emphasis on the learner management information system. So if you don't have one yet, then you definitely need to look at that very seriously. And we have some great recommendations for that. Quality management system is extremely important. We've actually rewritten our quality management system template. Delene Sheesby, thank you so much for all your hard work in the background. She's just completed the 2025 revision, which keeps it up to date with new QCTO policies and procedures, etc. But that's a critical part of your accreditation process. Your site visit is also a critical part. Here's one of our licensees, Rishan Sirapat, who successfully got his accreditation. And you can see all the preparation in terms of the site and the venue. They are very, very venue specific with the QCTO. And there are some many challenges there, perhaps for the flexible trainer who's going from venue to venue. But we do provide solutions. This is all part and parcel of your accreditation submission. Here's another one of our licensees, David Kuta, who's also successfully accredited for first aid. You can see the level of excellence in all aspects of the site visit. Just concluding at the end, after your site visit, you may have 4 days or so for remediations. Then the report will be sent to the QCTO Accreditation Committee. So this is an excellent opportunity. If there is one small thing that was missing, rather than deny you the opportunity for accreditation, I think QCTO is very fair in giving you an opportunity to quickly correct something. And it could be something as simple as the correct date on a certification of a document. And your accreditation letter is for 5 years. There is an appeal process if for any reason you have been declined. Very unlikely. As long as your I's are dotted and T's are crossed, you're not going to have a problem. And then, of course, the maintenance of your accreditation, bearing in mind that you will need to renew in your final year, and make sure that you give yourself sufficient time for that renewal. Very important. Post-accreditation, there's a whole phase, and we're not going to go into any detail here, but just to say that you need to follow their process in terms of submitting confirmation of the enrollment of your learners, and then also you have to complete the results, the assessed and moderated results from the course, at least 21 days, etc., after the FISA has been conducted. And the QCTO retains an exclusive right to issue the certificates. You are not allowed to issue certificates. Of course, you can issue a statement of results for your client, and this will be used as evidence that the learners have completed that particular course. So this is just a few bits of information. Of course, the Department of Employment and Labour approval is still relevant for machinery and for first aid, and we do assist you with that process as well. It's the great cost of 400 Rand for that application. It's a manual application, but we assist you with all those forms, and we've been privileged to have members of the Department of Employment and Labour attend our workshops and just help our licensees through, giving you the correct contact details, etc., etc. I think the biggest benefit of being an INTRA licensee is also the opportunity to network and collaborate with others. So within this situation, you might be in a situation right now where you don't have accreditation and or the right BEE profile for certain of your clients, and you can collaborate with 100 active INTRA licensees based in South Africa and the rest of Africa and the Middle East, and be able to satisfy your clients' demands. And this is one of the huge benefits of being an INTRA licensee, and many others. And I'm going to stop talking now and just hand back quickly to Ken.
Penny, wow, thank you so much. I really appreciate the work that you put into this and the research, and Penny is very, very thorough. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to do a bit of a wrap up, because essentially we've got this situation. On the one hand, we've got legislation, criminal legislation, that says you must comply, and if you don't comply, and they obviously wave a big stick or a finger, you could land up in trouble. And that's the truth of the matter. On the other hand, we want to make sure that the quality of the training in South Africa is the best we can possibly provide to the learner. As we said, keep the employer out of court and keep the employee out of hospital. We want to make sure that the moms and dads go home to their kids in the evening, and that normal family life is not disrupted. So that is, for me, a major, major thing to make sure that employees are safe. So with that in mind, we're going to suggest this. We're going to suggest that you follow a dual highway. On the one track, you do what the Occupational Health and Safety Act and says you must do, and do it as best as you can. On the other hand, you start getting ready for the QCTO accreditation like Penny suggested. Now, to help you with that, we've obviously set up the business in such a way that we'll be able to provide you with a lot of information, a lot of support, a lot of backup. And on the basis of it's your business, you run your business or your health and safety training department, it's yours. We don't want to take over or anything like that. I mentioned this is not a franchise, but it is a license, which means that you can get the rights to use the training material. So please go onto our website. There's lots of information you can pick up there. And then join us at AOSH. So AOSH is going to take place in Johannesburg early next week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I'm going to be there with Natalie, and I know that Penny has a special that she'd just very quickly like to talk to you about.
Yes, so we're delighted to offer our Air Special, which is 10% discount off the Prime and Platinum and Basic license programs. This is for full payment up front of the advance fee. But please do go onto the website and put in your request for quote for that, and we'll be happy to offer you that 10% discount.
Great. So I'm going to stop the recording in a moment, but I do want to say that I believe Natalie was saying that we dropped the signal. Maybe it's just the amount of people that we've actually got on the webinar today. So it topped at about 230, I think it was. So maybe that's the reason. I apologize for that. If it's bad, and I'm going to watch the video in a moment, we're going to re-record it. We'll start from scratch, but it'll just be Penny and myself and not much bandwidth challenge. And we'll let you have the URL to either or, whichever one works. So that's the first thing that I want to say. The second thing is I'm sure that there are people out there that have actually jotted down questions, and you have questions that you'd like to ask either Penny, myself, or one of our licensees. So please feel free to do that right now. I'm going to stop the screen share and go on to the normal, there we go, the normal screen, and I'll stop the recording in a short while. Good. So thank you once again for all of those who've joined a little late. Don't worry, we've made a recording of all of this, and we will come back to you. And I'm going to stop the recording in a moment, and then we'll take questions. So let's do that.